Hola, hola. Welcome back to the Chicana Therapist podcast. I'm Dr. Xochilt Alamillo, and this is our 4th episode. And today we're going to talk about friendships, amigas. We need them. We want them. Why is it so hard to have them? So this is one of the topics that I'm really passionate about as a therapist, but just as a Latina, as a grown 40-something-year-old woman. I've just noticed that friendships can be harder to maintain the older that you get, but somehow they also become the most important to have. They become crucial to your well-being. And I think that as Latinas, we have special considerations that we need to think about because as with everything else, familismo comes in, marianismo comes in, and so I thought it would be good to talk about it and give you a few of the observations that I've noticed with my clients in the past. I do work mostly with Latina adults and also my personal experience with it. And hopefully this resonates with you and helps you think about what changes you might need to make in your life or what's working. Let's get started. I think as Latinas, I think about how we're brought up to see friendships, and I think that is a big part of it. I think of older generations, and I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I think about my parents and their grandparents, and I also observe a lot in my husband's family, my mother-in-law, and I just noticed that I think friendships kind of came built in. Those generations, like our families, were our friends or our comadres or other people from the rancho or de la vecindad. They were our friends. Like it was built in. And we kind of mixed everything in, right? Your community, your family, everything just kind of happened naturally because we always came together for events, for funerals and baptisms and quinceañeras and weddings. And if you needed an ingredient, you went to the vecina or whatever the case may be. And we don't have that here. We don't necessarily have that. We have family. A lot of us have family anyway, but for example, I live a good 20-25 minutes away from my sisters and my parents and really anyone else. I kind of live out in the boonies, but it's not easy. And so I have found that I have to be a lot more intentional about spending time not just with family, but with other people that I consider good friends. Another thing that is different than possibly our ancestors or our older generations is that as kids of immigrants or as immigrants ourselves, we find ourselves as first gen of different spaces. So for example, I'm a first gen higher ed student. Right? So I had to find my way around higher education on my own, and I had to find other people that could relate to that experience because I couldn't really go back to my family. I mean, they were very supportive and I couldn't have done it without them, but it's not the same when they don't understand what that experience is like. Same thing when you go into a corporate world or you go into just a job after high school, there's no more built-in friendships or relationships. And so you figure out a way to make friends with coworkers or make friends with other people that are working near you or with your organization, whatever the case may be. And so that's another thing that makes it different, I think, for us as children of immigrants or immigrants is that we are navigating spaces that maybe people of older generations didn't necessarily have to navigate. So we live in this capitalistic ass, fast-paced world where who has time for anything, right? It's just all about working 40 hours a week. The kids have school, the kids have after school activities or sports or whatever. Any time that you do have free, you want to rest or you want to dedicate it to family or your hobbies or whatever the case may be. So time is also an issue for us here, where possibly in Latin American countries, things are a little less hectic than they are here in the US. And so oftentimes friendships tend to fall at the bottom of the priority list. And another one that maybe not all of us experienced, but I did experience this growing up, is that my family discouraged outside relationships. I remember my grandma used to tell me that there really weren't friends. that was fake, that no one was really your friend, that really the only people you could depend on was your family. And I know I'm not the only one. I know that I've heard other people say that. Like a lot of times we as women kind of have that teaching of like, don't trust other women. They're haters or whatever. They create drama. I know I heard a lot of that from friends, that their moms and their grandmas gave them that type of advice. I never really saw my grandma or my mom really have friendships. I really think they didn't have time, to be honest. They were really busy. And so I don't think there was time. I did see my mom have a few friendships, but they weren't regular. They were just people that sometimes she got to see, and they had a lot of love for each other, but not anything that was constant. And so that's another thing that kind of gets in the way, that those of us who do have friendships tend to, or maybe we don't know how to be friends. And I've noticed that a lot in people that I've interacted with, in my clients, like they don't know what that's supposed to look like, or they just haven't thought it through. They don't realize that a friendship is like any other relationship. You have to put effort and intention into it. So it's wild how much things can affect our friendships and our lack thereof. Or some people want to make friends and they feel like other people don't have that interest in building that relationship. So I've seen a lot of it, and I think that it's all of the reasons why this is happening are valid. And so I want to talk more about, so then what can we do about it? And when I talk about not knowing how to be a friend, I don't mean that you're mean or that you're cold. I mean more like, part of being a friend is being able to lean on each other. And I think sometimes as Latinas, we're taught to not be a burden to anyone. And so we hesitate to reach out for support or to just vent to people sometimes because we're like, I don't want to burden them with my problems. I should be able to deal with them, right? Which is like there's an archetype of the Latina strong one of like, I'm strong and I should be able to handle it. I don't need anybody in my life. I've never needed anybody and I'm not going to start now. That's also something I've heard. Or I've also heard people who have been burned by friendships, like they trusted somebody and they were betrayed, or hubo chisme, or who knows, right? And I think that oftentimes, not always, oftentimes these are things that happen when we're kids or adolescents and we carry it on into adulthood. Another thing I notice is that a lot of us don't like conflict. Again, being that like good Latina, right? We don't like conflict. And so sometimes if our friends fail us in some way, like maybe they don't show up for us or they do something that hurt our feelings, we're not very likely to try to communicate that and repair that rupture. We're more likely to be like, well, forget you then. I don't need you. And so I see that happen a lot too, in that, again, we don't really know how to be friends, and that can really impact our well-being. I want to get into, what can I do then? Yes, those things apply to me, or maybe something else applies to me, but what do I do? And one of the biggest things that I have noticed is that a lot of us want a village, but we don't want to be a villager, right? So yes, having a friendship is going to take time and energy, and sometimes sacrifice of time and energy, and you have to see that it would be worth it. And the thing is that just like any other relationship, some friendships will not work out and you kind of have to keep going. So that's the first thing I say, is that you have to be willing to put in the energy and the time and the commitment to try to make a friendship work. And if you don't have that going in when you're looking for friends, then I think that maybe you're not in a place in your life where that is a priority, and that's okay too. So how do you become a good villager? Well, one of the ways that you can be a good villager is by being consistent. Show up for people when you can. Show up for them. I think these days I hear a lot of people say, well, I invited them and they didn't come, or every time I invite them, they cancel, texted them and they never responded. One thing about me is I'm not very party social person. I'm an introvert, and so large gatherings are not always fun for me, and I still go to them because I know that they matter to people, and I do end up having fun. I've just kind of learned what my limits are. But if doing something that is not your favorite thing to do because it matters to your friend is part of being consistent. Another thing is being willing to initiate contact with someone. I think that we all kind of wait for each other. Like, I met this cool person at this event, but we exchanged numbers, but she hasn't texted me. And it's like, okay, but you haven't texted her either, right? So being unafraid to initiate and to say, hey, would you want to go grab coffee someday? Or I would love to have dinner or lunch or something like that, right? You have to be willing to initiate. And sometimes you have to be the one to initiate often, because sometimes people are in different places in their life. If they are a busy mom and you aren't, then you might be the one who takes on the blunt of the work of like planning, finding something to do, working with their schedule. And that might be for a season or a time. And just like any other relationship, it doesn't always have to be 50-50. So that's one thing, being unafraid to initiate or to say, hey, do you want to be friends in one way or another? And I think that's part of our work. We're afraid of rejection, or we're afraid to be that burden or to be seen as needy, but we have to take some of these risks if we want to actually meet and connect and build friendships with people. Another thing is that you have to know that you're ready to be vulnerable. And I'm not saying meet with someone and then tell them your whole life story and all your trauma and all your wounds. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's okay for you to, disclose a little bit, kind of feel it out. Just like if it were a romantic relationship, you kind of feel it out and you see how it goes. And that shows that you're invested, right? I have met people who are fascinated, like we'll talk and they're fascinated and they want to know all about me and what I think. But when I ask them about themselves, they're very closed off. They're very like, I'm really boring. There's nothing I have to say about myself. And I just think that they're not feeling like they want to be vulnerable like that. And that's okay. Absolutely. That's okay. But it does send me a message of this person is not ready to go deep. And that, again, that's okay. But if you do look for deep friendships, you have to be ready to reciprocate. Going back to this idea of showing up for people, I think it applies to showing up for yourself too. What I mean by that is that if you have a certain time dedicated to being social with your friends or doing something with your friends, honor that. If you have in your calendar that you're going to have coffee with a friend, then follow through with that. Don't try to it's just coffee, so I'm going to cancel it because I have way too much to do or things like that. I think protecting the time that you dedicate to the person, but also that you dedicate to yourself for having friendships is really important. And if you feel like you need more friends in your life, you're looking for those deeper connections, then actually go out and try to meet people. I know a lot of people who complain about not having friends. I don't have any friends, or all my friends got married and had kids and I'm single. So now I need new friends, or at least different types of friends. But then when I ask them oh, okay, well, what are you doing to meet people? And they're not doing anything. And so push yourself to go out and do things. I think it's so funny because sometimes we'll only go out and do things if someone will do them with us, but that takes already having friends. So sometimes you have to be willing to go by yourself, or maybe invite another friend, but also have that in mind that you're there to meet people. Don't be afraid to say things like, oh, it would be cool if we could have coffee sometimes. I really want to learn more about whatever, your business, your hobby, whatever the case may be. So attend things. You don't have to pay money, but there's plenty of places where you can meet people, and there's a lot of offerings out there. I've noticed more and more people are looking for that face-to-face, in-person connection. And so you have to get out there if you want to meet people. Some people do volunteer work, and that's how they meet people who maybe have similar interests as they do, or they go to community events that are happening, or if you have kids, you go to kid events and meet the other moms. So you have to sometimes get creative. And this is for those of you who feel a little more bold. If those spaces don't exist, try to create them. Challenge yourself to invite 3 new people to dinner, like a group dinner once a month or something like that. or create a walking group in your neighborhood, or join groups that have the same hobby as you and see if you can do meetups. So those are things that you can do in order to make and keep friends. Remember that you would have to show up even when you're tired, and you would have to show up for people even when you're not sure how. It's so amazing how it can just be helpful to have someone listen to you and say, oh my goodness, that sounds so hard. I think a lot of people feel like if I have a friend and they have problems, I have to solve it for them. And that's not true at all. And finally, I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't talk about how sometimes these topics can be painful. I want to address how there can be a lot of grief around friendships, because I don't know anyone that it hasn't happened to, where you either have a falling out with a friend or you just have different paths in life and you're not as close as you used to be. And it's one of these things where you don't feel like sharing, like, oh, I lost a friend. People wouldn't be as understanding, right? But it's a big part of our life and something we don't talk about enough, this idea that we don't get to grieve friends. We don't get to grieve the version of a person, like if they've changed a lot and they're a completely different person and you miss who they used to be. And so this is your permission to grieve those friendships. It's okay to grieve the version of your life where you were a social butterfly and you had a lot of friends, and that's not where you are now. I think that it's important that we grieve that in order to kind of move on and decide to have a different version of ourselves. The good news is that it's never too late to build another support circle or add people to your support system. It also isn't late to show up differently in your friendships if you want to improve the quality of your friendships. It's not too late to go out and seek new friendships. And so I encourage you to think about what you would want that to look like for you, what you would want your social circle, your friendship circle to look like. And if you feel like it's missing something or it's missing people, then don't be afraid to start building that. And there'll be a lot of growing pains, but it'll be worth it in the end. And with that, I leave you. That's the end of this episode. Remember to follow me. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, and of course there's my website where I have a blog, thechicanatherapist.com. And as of the date of this recording, we have 3 spots left in our Oaxaca Reencuentro retreat for Latinas. So if you're interested, check out my website at thechicanatherapist.com, and there's a retreats tab where you can find out more information. The retreat will be in September, and hopefully some of you all can join us. It will be an amazing time with myself and my friend Claudia Muro, who is also a therapist here in Colorado, and we're really excited about it. And out of 15 spots, again, there's only 3 left. So check it out. Hopefully this was helpful for you, made you think. Send it on to someone else. Please share. I'd love to have more people listen to me yap. And if you have any suggestions for topics on this podcast, send them over. I am again at thechicanatherapist.com. If you email me at Xochilt at thechicanatherapist.com, and that's Xochilt, Xochilt at thechicanatherapist.com. I will be happy to add it to my list of topics that are requested. And that's it. Have a fantastic week, everyone. Cuídense mucho.